I don't think you're going to talk to me for a week. I think that you're going to punish me with the silent treatment. I think that you're going to seek revenge. If you can just say, I love you and I need a minute, you say that to your children, you say that to your partner, you say to your colleagues, people respect it.
Welcome to Now What podcast with Yogi Patel. Today we have an amazing, outstanding guest, a friend and a colleague. Her name is Mary Tamborski, and she is local in San Diego, and she is a marriage and family therapist here locally in San Diego. And I've had this pleasure of being part of some of the activities that Mary has presented in the past with positive discipline. And it's a pleasure to speak with her today. She is a daughter of Dr. Jane Nelson, who is a founder of Positive Discipline. And she is so much more than a daughter of Dr. Jane Nelson. She is a mother. She's going to talk a lot about social media as well and how she uses positive discipline and being raised as a positive discipline child. And as a marriage and family therapist, there's so much wisdom here, and we're so excited to have you here, Mary. I probably didn't do justice to all that you do, but we're just so grateful that you are here to speak with us today.
Well, thank you, Yogi. It's my pleasure and honor.
Oh, lovely. Mary, marriage and children. As parents, we're raising our children. We're all in a busy hustle bustle of the day. How does happy and healthy marriage benefit children? And this is like both emotionally and developmentally. We know this, but how do we practice this?
Well, I think it's really important because children are always watching. And, up until even the age of 7, as we have learned, is that they're great at perceiving and terrible at interpreting. And so if mom and dad are not able to communicate effectively, the children are picking up on what they see. And then they will then, model that safe type of conflict management or lack thereof with their own parents and relationships, and then their future romantic relationships as well. And so when mom and dad can practice having calm, clear, respectful communication, dialogue, even disagreements, but more of just understanding versus like without criticism or putting the other person down, the children just learn that naturally of, whether it's just listening and asking more questions and not being defensive, or, a question versus, for example, saying, help me understand what you mean by that. How often do we get stuck in relationships because what one person says, but what we interpret is completely different. And then a child might see us get defensive. And then that becomes a model behavior of, misinterpretation equals defense. And so being able to understand that and saying, or even another, form of communication of, wow, what you just said or, did hurt my feelings. Is that what you meant to do? So imagine if a child is hearing that, you and your partner have agreed beforehand to call each other out or to remind each other, lovingly remind each other if we say something that's hurtful. And then the children are seeing that. So then it doesn't get, escalated into a deeper conflict. If you can stop it the minute we feel hurt, ouch, that comment hurt me, or when you picked up your phone while I was talking, that hurt my feelings. And I'm guessing that's not what you meant to do. Let me know when you have 5 minutes so I can have your undivided attention. So speaking to your partner that way, your child watches that. And then guess what? Fast forward in 10 years when they're being inconsiderate or disrespectful or, just not sensitive or thoughtful to a conversation. They have witnessed mom and dad having this dialogue and in a respectful way, not as in like a calling you out way. So then if mom has it with the son in 10 years and saying, I noticed that you started looking at your phone while we were still talking. It feels inconsiderate and disrespectful. Would you like 5 more minutes to finish what you're doing? And then I can have your undivided attention versus taking it personally. We do that. We get stuck in our own, taking everything everyone does personally. And then we feel attacked. And then we tack back. So that's a big answer to your question, but I think most of it is just modeling the skills. And children don't know that their skills are tools. They hear it. It's a language. They pick up on it. And then it becomes fluent because mom and dad are practicing.
What you just shared is flying united, parents being on the same page, showing that mutual respect for one another because children are modeling. So what if a family that really wants all of those things, right? They just, let's say two partners, and they're raised differently. They come from two different backgrounds, and the modeling that perhaps has been, they've been, the information they've seen in their home will conflict or will be different. How do they now come together and figure out a way, like what are the steps? So let's say they've been together, they have their children, and now they want to sort of get the family on track. And they want to use the information to really create their family structure that is respectful. So what are some of the steps in going from not having structure to creating a different way of functioning in a home?
Okay, well, I was speaking to a couple in my office, and they were having parenting conflicts, disagreements, feeling like they're on different pages, or even in their relationship. What I do is I always start with, what is it that you both want? And, even as parents, this is a really popular activity that we do in the beginning of our workshops, is imagining future. What is it, the North Star or the destination that we're trying to get to, and how do we get there? So having a conversation with your partner during a loving and connected time, so important. Again, this is highlighting the tool of connection before correction, and coming up with a plan or an agreement for your future. That's the correction. So you have to really connect first so that, both people can be on the same page. So to say, what is it that you would like to model in a relationship for our children? What are some of those different qualities? And then to go even deeper with the couple, I might say, what are some of the different models or tendencies or characteristics, qualities that you saw? Because a lot of the times we come up with what we want based off of the opposite of what our parents had, or, some modeling of what they did, but we don't even know exactly how to articulate that. They're loving, they're in love, but we don't know how do we know that they're in love? What does that look like? So being able to come up with that together, that final destination of what you both want for your children, and coming up with a mission statement, not for your children, but for your relationship and what you want your children to see. And it could be, we don't want it to be too daunting. It's not, paragraph, but it could be, 5 to 10 bullet points: loving, respectful, good listeners, empathetic, sensitive. And so if that's the case, come up with a mission statement or just some, kind of go-to guides so that when you get off track, you can lovingly remind your partner and say, the way that we just handled that is not focused on our North Star. What could we do in the future? And so this is the part that relationships, I feel like this is more of like a 2024 thing, because I'm really learning it in my own relationship too. And I'm going to get off track, but then get back on track. Is when we have conflict, because we're going to, and I'm kind of doing this with my hand because we get flipped, we're triggered, we're human. We're going to have conflict. We're going to bring up all of our mischief with the people we love most. After we calm and, talk about it, and the disagreement or the argument is over, most couples, in fact, I would say 99%, me even being one of those, is not taking the part out of that conflict and saying, now that we know, because we're connected, now that we know today versus yesterday, what we know now, what could we say or do differently so that we don't go through that same situation or the same argument again? Because oftentimes it's not about the argument. It goes deeper into the meaning of the argument, but saying, here's what I thought and felt, taking responsibility on my part. And here's what I would say and do differently. And then having them do that. And then that's where the recovery part goes, and the resolve. When we resolve, resolve, we break down the word, it's resolve, or resolution is resolution. We miss that. So if we know that even these people that we're madly in love with, to start, we've got 20 plus past years history from each individual side that we're now bringing, often with lots of mischief. And so we have to figure it out as we go, because we can have a mission statement, we can have a North Star, but we don't really know how to navigate through the conflict until we go through it. You can come up with different plans like, oh, I was quick to be defensive when you said X statement. Next time, I'm going to ask, what did you mean by that? Even, having this role play and dialogue with your partner for future arguments, you're also using the same skills and tools that you'll be using with your children every time we flip or have a conflict, disagreement. And we have to go back and repair and resolve it again so that we don't keep repeating the same stuff over and over again. So when my couples come in after a week or two of in between sessions and they say, we had a fight, and it's like, okay, without giving me all the details, what did you guys learn? What did you take away from it? How did you guys grow as a couple? How did you level up? And so they see me celebrating it because it's more opportunity for them to discover deeper layers of each other and then take information for the future.
Wow. This is so outstanding. So this is one of the greatest ways to really get deeper into one another. And, we're always learning about our spouses and actually ourselves as well. You mentioned something about you did this with your hand. Could you explain in detail what that is about the brain regulation?
Yes. And I do it all the time. Sometimes I realize I do it without even teaching or demonstrating it first, but it comes from Dr. Dan Siegel. It's based off of his work, who was a brilliant author, and he calls it the brain in the palm of the hand. And so if this was to represent our brain, the bottom of the brain represents the brain stem. This is the oldest part. This is the part we need to survive, our heart rate, our blinking, our breathing. And then the thumb represents the amygdala. And this is where all of our mischief is. This is where all of our memories are stored. So in therapy, this is where we store all the trauma. Unfortunately, unless it's, processed, it lives there. Thankfully, it's protected by our prefrontal lobe. But also here is all of our feelings of insecurity, inferiority, and inadequacy developed mostly through our thought system and our belief systems before the age of 7. And so this is like our 7-year-old self is what I say. When we're here, it's not our logical, educated, tools, mindset. It's our amygdala, which is our mischief brain. This is our intoxicated brain. And these two work together. So when we're flipped, so then our prefrontal lobe right here, the cortex, is where you and I are right now. This is where all of our logical thinking, our rational thinking, our executive function, morality. And this is when all of our ideas sound great. Everything I learn in therapy is absolutely, I'm going to apply to everything I learned in my parenting class. Of course, I know that. I'm going to do that. That makes perfect sense. And then what happens when we least expect it, we get triggered or, our buttons get pushed and we flip. And so that part of our lobe that keeps us rational is gone. So gone. And though because of mirrored neurons, when we're here, our partner, our children are also here. And so this is, our reaction. This is our reptilian part of our brain here. Reptiles eat their young. And so what we want to do is not do anything when we're here. We need to teach our children, and we do this through modeling, but we have to learn how to regulate and to close the lid down. And what you just did, Yogi, deep breath, that, counting to 10. Taking 10 deep breaths, saying how you feel, walking away, anything you can do, just that pause. When we're in a boxing match and the boxer gets knocked down, how many seconds do they get before that bell dings? 10. So it's we have to no matter what, this is what we got to teach our children. This is part of emotional intelligence, is self-regulation. And so this is a learned skill. This isn't something we're born with because no baby is learning how to regulate when they're upset. We have to do that for them. And as they get older, they learn how to regulate. And mom and dad, that double breath, that pumps that nervous system, that break. And we do that. It's over and over again through repetition, through consistency, and through the discipline of us teaching it through our children, our disciples. They're learning through us. We don't do anything when we're here. And so I remember when the pandemic was just starting and I was just all the time, I don't need to tell anyone why. And I said, family, I have an announcement. Mom is not going to speak when I'm mad. I can't even form a sentence without irritation, without frustration, without anger, without stress. So if I'm upset, I'm not going to talk. And they're eating dinner and they're like, this is, decide what you will do and follow through. So this is my decision. I'm deciding I will not speak when I'm upset. And so they, eating their dinner and they're like, okay, mom, sounds great. Maybe that day later or, next day, my 8-year-old at the time said, Mom, why are you talking? What do you mean? Why am I talking? because time for bed. I go back. And he's like, you said you weren't going to talk when you're upset. And I was like, so now we're going to modeling, right? So now I take that deep breath and walk away. And then the next day, this is where it catches you by surprise through the modeling. He says, Mom, I'm not talking right now. And I said, you just were talking, but I don't say that. I said, why not? He says, because I'm too upset. So when we model for our children how important it is just to zip it, I see it in adults. Like, but why would we ever expect our children to be able to control their behavior? This is one of my mom's favorite, quotes, when we can't control our own. And it starts when they're small. And so we have to teach it even to our couple. So back to even a relationship with conflict management, 20 years, 25 years difference, each style, however you were raised, your partner is going to handle conflict the way they were raised. They handle conflict or completely opposite. So maybe that's avoid it. They shut down. Don't want to talk about it. Sweep it under the rug. That's one way. And another partner might want to talk about it right now. I can't sleep. I'm anxious until we solve this problem. I don't care if you're mad. I can't calm down until we talk about it. And so they're living, here, but this person knows I can't talk when I'm here. So this is when you go back to your agreements when you're calm. We both know, like, you get anxious while I calm down, and I get, threatened when you force me to talk about it when we're upset. What would be a reasonable win-win solution that we can both agree on for how to come back and talk about it when we're calm? And it's beautiful. I see it happen all the time in my office. I'm pointing at my couch with couples. And they say, okay, and they might even come up with a further agreement to saying, I know you need to talk about this now. I love you, and I'm too upset to talk about it now. And the anxious person will say, you saying I love you, take as much time as you need. Because when I'm in my 7-year-old self, I don't think you're going to talk to me for a week. I think that you're going to punish me with the silent treatment. I think that you're going to seek revenge. So it's like, if you can just say, I love you and I need a minute, you say that to your children, you say that to your partner, you say it to your colleagues. People respect it. And the more we practice it, that becomes part of our condition. We're humans who go through our conditioned behavior. And so we have to recondition this, mid part of our brain to take that breath, to walk away.
When you're just speaking and just talking about Dr. Dan Siegel's brain, immediately I'm reminded, because I think we forget often to just take deep breaths, and we just hold our breaths often, or we do shallow breathing when we're concentrating, or we get triggered. Like you said, we become, 7-year-old self, because that comes up for us based on the situation. If you like the content, what you're hearing so far, please don't forget to push that follow button. You're listening to Now What Podcast with Yogi Patel, and we have Mary. She is Dr. Jane Nelson's daughter and a family and marriage therapist. If you like the content of this video, please don't forget to follow. And also, if you want more information, visit the website, yogipateltte.com.